Hello, this is the Wood Life Podcast. Today we're here with Angel City Lumber. I'm Colin Campbell, the Industrial Sales Manager at Wood-Mizer. I'm here with Duston Moore, the Sawmill Products Manager at Wood-Mizer. And so we're with Angel City Lumber, or ACL. I just had the opportunity to go out in January and visit you guys and talk about projects that you're looking at moving forward with our equipment. And our film crew was also out there and did a really great video on you guys. So for the folks that have seen that video, this is probably going to be a little bit of a review. And if you haven't checked it out, for sure, go and do that. It's just, it's really awesome to see what you guys are doing, and we're looking forward to hearing it. Yeah, Dustin?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, you can watch the film on our YouTube channel. We've got it posted on the website as well. So, but really, the film is all about what Angel City Lumber, kind of how they came to be and what they're doing. And we're gonna catch up on some things that we touched on in the film with everything that's going on in LA County with the fires, and you guys are just kind of busy as you could be with kind of the aftermath of that. So we definitely want to hear about what's going on there. But to kind of start, why don't you guys tell us, who you are, where you come from, how this group of people kind of came together to do the awesome things you're doing in forest conservation and making sure that we kind of honor the trees that in other cases would just be lost. So kind of give us a little bit of background about yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Todd Cooper. I've been with ACL for about 8 years now, and I have the no traditional path into this. Like anyone I know who's like, "What are you doing now?" I'm like, working in lumber. Everyone's like, "That that doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't be there." I came through. I grew up in Virginia and came to the West Coast right after college, and worked in different kinds of jobs. Worked in music for a while. Sound like the Big Lebowski. I worked in music industry for a while as a guitar tech. I was a roadie for a couple years, and then I got home and got married, and my wife and I moved to Los Angeles from San Diego. And when we were here, was doing not doing well at acting and improv comedy. And so I was just kind of getting bored of it. And I was like, I got to find something to do. And I had just met Jeff through a friend of ours. And I was like, what's this guy up to? And I heard he was starting this business. And so I was like, hey, what do you got going on? You need a guy? And he's like, I could maybe use a guy part-time. And I was like, okay. And so at 40 years old, I went over and I started on a Monday, and I think I worked 40 hours from the first week. It was never part-time. You were like, just keep coming until we tell you don't come. And I was like, okay. So I just came, and the first day I was sweeping the floors and was happier than I'd been maybe ever. Just being physical and being in a place where it felt so good to be doing that. But I'd done marketing, I'd done advertising and music and comedy and acting and all this stuff, and I was just couldn't really find my thing. So yeah.
So just because I like to start fights, East Coast seafood versus West Coast seafood.
Is that a fight? Do people fight about that?
Well, in Maryland, everybody's all about the blue crabs, and they're they're the greatest thing God ever created. But the West Coast, it's in my opinion, the West Coast oysters are, top notch. So that's my opinion, though.
I mean, I think, every area has what it does well. You're not going to get a blue crab. There's a lobster roll place in LA for a while, And everyone I knew
All
from the
right.
East. Yeah, here you go.
Let's get
That's it.
serious for a second.
This guy's from Boston. He's like, yeah, we did not have a lobster roll place. We had a place that had lobster on
Exactly.
bread. That was fun. So you just kind of like, we have a good scene here of food in LA, which is awesome. But yeah, like we just don't try to claim things here. We do have a Nashville hot chicken place. We try. We have a little bit of everything.
Seafood's great here.
Yeah,
seafood's good.
absolutely. So Dave's Hot Chicken is here in the Midwest, and that's from California. So yeah.
Oh,
it's one of my
we sent
favorite
it out to
places.
you?
Did not know that.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
go.
absolutely.
A little export.
Yeah.
I never
Awesome.
have any arguments about the seafood I get. When you're from Indiana, whether you're on the East Coast or West Coast, you're just happy.
That's true.
Have it
Yeah.
fresh.
Seafood
If it's
need
not
it.
catfish, you're doing pretty good.
You're on a coast, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, my name's Brady Zaitoon, and I truly feel fortunate to found these guys to work with here in Los Angeles on the West Coast. I'm originally from Texas. Grew up in North Texas. Went to the University of Texas. I studied mechanical engineering there, and then, as most Texans do, I get a job and go into the oil field. And so I worked for a company out of Houston. A lot of mechanical engineers would go to Houston because that's big industry, a lot of manufacturing, oil companies. And but knowing that was something that was for me mainly to gain experience in the real world. So it wasn't really in alignment with kind of how I felt about where humans and nature interface. It was more exploitative, but I was able to travel with that job. So the first year, it was a management training program. So every 3 months, you traveled around to a different part of the business, and you got to see, how you might work within those different parts of National Oil Varco as the company. And so whenever I went to Conroe, I went to Houston, Cedar Park outside of Austin, and then also Dubai. So I was there for 3 months, and I got to see a lot of the development of an infrastructure and how the oil and gas industry was a little intense, but operating at a scale that just blew my mind. So anyway, I took a job knowing that I would not really want to pursue that. And in the meantime, I went to work for a nonprofit in East Austin, and that kind of helped form my idea of Lifecycle, like surrounding how everything, kind of has a cycle of life, from the source of it, which in our case is lumber from trees, the process of that, which is how we take a tree and turn it into, the processing of that material, the use of that, which would be lumber for construction, furniture, and then resource, which would be how do you put that back into another life cycle. So moving on from that nonprofit, I started working for myself and seek. I was doing energy audits and working for myself, my own company, doing installation inspections on new construction and doing lead consulting. And then I got my professional engineering license and started becoming a building commissioning agent, which was kind of a new type of role within a large index of sustainability rating system. So in that, and I'm getting to kind of why, like how I've kind of fit into ACL and how I initially, when I met Jeff, told him I could, I think, help grow the business. And so being in those, once I got my professional engineering license, that opened up a door to the commercial landscape. So, and those jobs are very large and long. They have long windows. So, initially working with the design teams and seeing how those conversations go, and then also from there, seeing that project all the way through construction. So I learned that, if we talk to designers and we get our name in these drawings, once that goes out to bid, the contractors have to actually, if our names are in the drawings, reach out to us. So, so in those rooms with those architects, I was like, well, if we're doing local lumber, this was actually in Austin, and I sought out a place there called Harvest Lumber, which is still there. Shout out to Harvest Lumber in Austin. and so I told them kind of like, hey, I'm thinking about growing. I'm thinking about how I can contribute to this kind of business, this industry. And then we moved to LA. So my wife got a residency at UCLA, and her sister gave me a book called Good, Clean, Fun, which was a Nick Offerman book that featured Angel City Lumber. And so I saw that. I was like, oh, wow, there's urban lumber in LA. So from there, I looked on Instagram, followed them on Instagram, and saw they had a Lee Nielsen hand tool event. And I went down and I met Jeff there, and Jeff was sweeping the floor. And
I passed off my responsibilities as soon as I could.
Yeah.
Prerequisite to ACL.
That's right. You got to start sweeping the floor.
That's right.
And so I met Jeff, and I think as many people like Todd can vouch for this, as soon as you meet him, he wants to hear your story. He wants to know you, and he kind of is the magnet that has drawn people to Angel City Lumber. And so eventually I told him, hey, I can work here part-time, but I do think, I could help grow the business in these different areas, trying to get us on the map with these larger design firms. So, and that was in 2016. So about a year later, I started working full-time. And right now I'm managing some of those commercial architectural accounts around Los Angeles. So we focus on them to try to get some of our different products into these bigger jobs around town. So I do that, and I also do the CFO responsibilities and do sales for our custom projects. And then you also have to consult folks as well on if architects and designers are our advocates, you need to help give them the tools that they can specify us correctly. So that's basically what I'm doing right now at Angel City Lumber.
So some of the projects that we showed in the film, he was waiting to do that the whole time.
Be off the couch.
That was wild. Sorry, my dog a pillow fell on his back and he thought he was getting murdered.
I feel it, man.
He ran out of here like somebody was trying to kill him. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. So in the film, we saw several what looked to be large projects. Did you have a hand in some of those and engaging with those groups to not only supply but design?
That is, yes. So with what we're doing, there's such a unique way of going about our business, just because it's not, I guess, a off the shelf kind of thing that people can just say, how can we use you? And so we do have to help kind of guide them. And, so I would say we help develop design with the architects, specifying species. But yeah, some of those jobs, the designers have really great ideas, but they're just looking at us as, okay, how can we make this happen? And we want this intention to use local material in the project. How can we do it in a way that might not get cut out of the project eventually when it comes time to build it? So we work with them early to give them, hey, best recommendations on species, on sizes, keep the cost low. That way, you can present it to the ownership and see if how much they're willing to spend on this type of feature of their project.
Right.
And so, yes, like one hotel, that was a big one. And so with Rios, we have a couple really good design firms that we work with, and we've developed trust over the years now. So, and we have a good portfolio of work as well. And so, yes, but guiding them, helping develop their design, giving whoever's doing installations, like kind of details on best practices. So, those jobs they've been great, because now, especially in the public space, we can like bring people to them and show them. Like that's some of the appeal of having commercial work is, and work in the public spaces. You can actually bring your friends and family and go sit down at a restaurant that has some of our local materials and celebrate them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, we've got the guitar tech turned comedian. We've got the engineer. So
Oil
Jeff,
field tycoon.
yeah, the oil tycoon. That's right. Turned engineer. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about you, and and are you still pushing brooms? Or are you still bringing people in?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't push a broom, then what good are you, really? You got to always be able to push a broom. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I actually have never met these guys before, so this is interesting. I'm gonna be curious to see how you guys edit this. I'm actually, before we get to that, especially for Todd here, maybe we could get a little more out of the guitar tech guy, because he deflects so much, this guy, and he's always like downplaying everything. But the fact of the matter is, he's done so much for ACL and continues to do so. And just like Brady, I know Brady would also say the same and attest to Todd. He wears a lot of hats. He does an amazing job. He helped get this thing off the ground. And he's going to come across as like, I did this thing. I wasn't very good at it. I did this thing. I suspect he's very good at all the things he does, because he's certainly still good at everything he does. So, I don't know. Maybe just sprinkle a little extra history of Todd would be great.
I did. I because have done so much random stuff. I also worked at Apple at a retail store for 6 years, where I was a manager and a inventory control specialist, and all different roles. Which all of these things, aside from improv comedy, all of these things have contributed to being able to have a wide set of skills. I assume probably a lot of people entering your world at Wood-Mizer, people who are coming into this are a lot of times coming into it later in life, and a lot of life experience, a lot of these random different jobs, working in marketing and advertising for a few years, has really been beneficial. When coming here, I remember I was always like, why am I working these jobs? I'm just they're not hitting for me. It's just not what I want to be doing. But now in my life, having had all those experiences, it's been really helpful. Especially, in a small business, you do have to be a jack of all trades, because you don't have the luxury of just hiring people. So you got to be able to thumb in the dam on all those pieces. And so it turned out to be really beneficial to have so much experience across the board. I mean, again, the improv and guitar teching is not as helpful, but I'd say the tech experience, the inventory experience, the marketing experience. I did project management for a while. That experience has been helpful. So all of those things have kind of shaped the things I could bring to the table at ACL, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, when you look under the rocks that is Todd's life, there's always some thing where you're like, oh my God, I didn't know he did that. Mm-hmm. Why didn't he say that?
My life doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for it. Yeah.
But to Todd's point, I think the generalists that kind of we all got this thing off the ground is necessary and helpful. Yeah, and I think another thing to kind of just talk about right off the bat. Sorry if I'm going off on a tangent here,
no,
but
you're fine. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I think so Brady and Todd both were talking about the ways in which we all kind of got this albatross off the ground, and the other thing, which I think Harrison and Colby did a great job in the Wood-Mizer film of showing, is that yes, we can interface with all kinds of people that are potential clientele, but at the end of the day, there's also, you got to make the thing. And our manufacturing team is also, I think, like Brady, like Todd, a lot of people that come to, like myself, that come to ACL and are like, I used to do this, I used to do this, I used to do this. I don't know. Maybe I could run a sawmill, or maybe I could load a kiln, or maybe I could fabricate a table, or maybe I could bloody blue, or maybe I have already, but never to this degree. So I think our manufacturing team, our project management team, our marketing team, I mean, these are all people who are really fantastic and talented, and also generalists, to Brady's point.
The not compromising piece and kind of being, it kind of gets to being true to who you are, right? And kind of sticking with that as a goal for culture within the business, right? I think that's a huge thing. And I think that really came out in the film that Harris and Colby were able to put together. I mean, I really felt like as I watched that, like I had never met you guys, and had never really heard of Angel City Lumber until I watched that film. I mean, I'd heard from, our guys about, how awesome it was, how good it was going to be, and just our high expectations for it, just because of what you guys were kind of bringing to the table for it. So when we watched it, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I get who these guys are. Like, it was very evident of what you're trying to do in LA. And, as you, even just the images of that we were able to capture of you guys and of your employees, it was like they love doing what they're doing. Like, this is very much who they are, right? I felt like we were able to capture that in the film. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like going through that filming process? And because you kind of have to be vulnerable, right? You kind of you're opening the door to the world of who you are. And so can you talk about that process and maybe what your goal was through all that?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing to say about that is that I think Harrison and Colby really bring a listening ear, and they allow for that. They are actually really perceptive and really open to like, hey, we really want to know what makes you guys tick. They didn't come in with like, here's our agenda, here's what you're gonna do. Okay, here's a shot list. I need you here. You know what I mean? They came in with a very like listening and open. And I think as far as storytelling goes, that's the best way to go about it. So in that sense, it was really easy to kind of just be, I didn't feel compelled. Like, I don't think any of us felt compelled to like put anything on it, because we were comfortable just being ourselves and what we do. So, and then the other part of it was, I remember, at least for the storytelling element, for the voiceover part, sitting on Todd's couch, again, Harrison had some very poignant and pointed questions that kind of open up room for like what the spirit of it all is. So, I guess what I would say is what it was like. It was very easy and vulnerable, just to, here's what happened.
Yeah, good.
We always talk about like, are you guys getting that loud beep on your side, by the way?
I heard it once.
I didn't get it.
Well, lucky for us, we get it. I just like, I was going to say that I've been talking about this, like the shape of our business. Like the hardest thing for us, I think, with film is like in LA, there's so many amateur filmmakers. Amateur doesn't mean bad. It just means people coming up and they want to get stories under their belts. So we get reached out to a lot for like, hey, can we come do a story? Because it's a weird thing, right? Like a sawmill in the middle of downtown Los Angeles is interesting and off the wall. So we get a lot of interest in that way. People wanting to build their, and we're like, yeah, come shoot. Like that's great. Like we're never like, we're on board. Like we want them to win. If it's good for them, it's good for us. Great. But it's really hard to get the story. It shouldn't be that precise, but it's really precise, the thing that we're trying to do at Angel City. And it's really hard to get that across. I've been thinking about it as like, I don't know, like if you've heard of this, but I've heard that like dolphins and porpoises, when they swim next to each other, they have that sonar. And they kind of bounce sonar between the two of them as they swim past something. So when something passes in between them, essentially the sonar is bouncing and they're getting sort of a 3D view of that thing, like whatever it is in between them. And our conversations in our business, we always are talking about our mission and what we're trying to achieve. And that thing in the middle is just sort of like, it's like our sonars, our voices talking. And we're trying to like figure out what exactly is this thing. And it changes. It's not always the same. It morphs and changes a little bit all the time. And so when somebody comes in and wants to like do a quick story, we're like, oh, but the thing is so precise and it's always changing. And to Jeff's point, you know, when Colby and Harrison came in, they were so cool about like being part of that sonar, listening to the story, understanding it, and then being able to tell the story because they got the story. And that was, for us, that was a unique experience. Usually, like, the story is like urban lumber. These guys do, you know, they take trees down in LA and want to make sure it's used and all. And like, there are these like broad strokes that they're true, but like they really got to the heart of who we are and what we're doing. And like, good storytellers are good listeners, and they're really good listeners. And turns out they're also incredibly accomplished cinematographers and filmmakers. So they're like, they have all those skills to like really tell that story. So it felt exciting to like be heard and have our story be told in a way that we like actually are like, this is the story. This is exactly who we are. So that was really cool.
Yeah. I feel like we're definitely going to have to throw their faces on here. They're always concerned about being behind the camera. I'm already getting a head nod, but yeah, the listeners are going to want to see you. They're going to want to put a face with the name. But yeah, no, obviously, what Harrison and Colby do is, I mean, it's just second to none. That's what it is. But I would also say this about you guys. Harrison came back, and he goes a lot of places, and he comes back a lot. And he came back, and he was like, hey, you got to go out there. These guys are looking to grow. They're not really sure what that looks like on the sawmill side. You're the guy to go out and see them, and just went on and on about you guys. And so I was like, all right, yeah, awesome. So I'm getting out of Indiana in the middle of winter, and I booked a ticket and got right out there in front of you. And I wasn't doing an interview, and I wasn't doing anything but trying to come and figure out what you guys do. And I didn't have to ask a single thing. All I had to do was show up, and it just comes out of you guys as a business. I mean, it's instant. You walk into the showroom, and you guys took me up into the forest and in the mountains, and it's so natural to you. And I go into a lot of sawmills, and not putting any of them down. They all have their place, right? But the number of people over the years now, just haven't been around the world in sawmills. You know, you guys are just way up there in how you convey where you're going and what you're doing. And so, yeah, I don't. It's very natural, and it's really awesome. The attachment to the finished product for you guys, to me, is really evident. And what I mean by that, I mean, I see your guys' attachment. When you took me into your log yard, like immediately you were pointing out individual logs and already telling the story of where they came from and what we're going to do with that. And like looking at me like, hey, what do you think we should do? I'm like, what do you want? I can give you the equipment, but you're going to have to figure out what to do with it, you know? But no, it was awesome. It was awesome to see that. So walk me down a little bit. Walk me down the path of why you're so attached to the products that you guys produce.
From an end product standpoint, or just from a whole process standpoint?
From a whole process. I mean, from your story, walk out hiking and seeing a log on the ground, which is the kind of the intro to the film, and it's like, oh, we got to do something with that. It can't go away. It can't. It's got a story, and it's, to me, the way that you put it, it was like, this thing is a piece of history, and we need to preserve it for every generation going forward. That's what I got. I don't want to speak for you, but that's what I got from it. So yeah, walk me down that path.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And then obviously I think Brady and Todd should add in as well. But I'm gonna pull the thread a little bit. So I'll bring it back to wood, but it has a little bit to do with the origin story that was in the film. So, and please, by all means, chuckles welcome. But I was an actor, so I moved out to Los Angeles from the Boston area as an actor. Ha 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 ha. I know. So my journey to that was just kind of a fascination as a kid about everyone's got opinions about other people, and everybody thinks someone else is doing something right or wrong. There's all these moral codes. There's all these ways in which we judge good or bad other people, right? And it just always fascinated me, because as a kid, I just felt like I could see that, yeah, everybody's flawed and everyone's doing their best. So I started really becoming obsessed with like other people's point of view, other people's perspectives, right? That's ultimately what led me to acting and a really funny middle school musical. But all these things kind of led me to that path. And so as I got older and I moved out here and I was working wood as a carpenter, I started slowly to think of that sentiment beyond humans, or beyond a human perspective. And just the more I learned about, okay, well, there's a whole, if we are a part, as humans, we are a part of some greater, like, all-encompassing ecology, if you want to call it, with all kinds of other animals and plants and soil and water and, the cosmos and all of this stuff. So now I'm going to bring it back to wood. So during all of this, I used to love, or I have always loved working wood. And that fascination with wood, you start to pull the thread and say, well, where does it come from? And then you start to learn about trees. I know a lot of woodworkers that we joke around. It's like, wow, that's what that tree looks like? I've worked this wood for 20 years. I've never even thought about what that tree looks like, So it started to become a fascination, not just with the wood, but where the wood came from. And then it became a fascination with trees. And then it became a fascination with forest. And then it became a fascination with urban forest. And then it became the general ecology. Is it on an arroyo? Is it on a hillside? Is it on a mountain? What makes that mountain, interesting to this ecology? What kind of animals frolic there, etc. So I guess the quote unquote provenance of what you're talking about, like where does a tree come from, or where does this log come from, or where does this board come from, comes from a long line of asking questions about the relevance of where something comes from, and how it ties in with your immediate environment. I don't mean environment like the buzzword environment, like, saving the environment. I mean it like your surroundings. And I don't know if that's too convoluted, but if let me know if I need to elaborate.
No, I think that makes sense. And we actually see this a lot right now, where people are trying to just get more in tune with kind of the environment directly around them, right? We're seeing very similar to what you're doing. You're really trying to harvest trees to produce something locally. I think, and you had quoted, or you had said that, if you source an urban log or urban lumber from Maine into California, is that really the point? Is that really, whereas getting that urban log from right down the street, just from a block over, or from a forest within the same county, there's the story and the connection to you, to your customers, to the people who are experiencing it in those spaces, is a much deeper connection than to say, yeah, I got this log from, the other side of the country. And we're
That's-
seeing that quite a bit, actually, where people are really trying to take better care and have better harvesting practices in their environment right around them. And I think that's critical. I think the storytelling that comes with those trees is just so much more impactful to know that it's right here with me. Like it's not like a foreign thing,
Yeah, I think to your point, you just reminded me to talk a little bit more about this too. Is like I think what you're saying is, Dustin, is there is a need for people to seek that out, and
Yes.
I've been curious about why. Who cares? Who cares? Why do people care about that? Why do people need that? Right? And it just strikes me that we outsource so much. We outsource. I mean, we literally outsource like business to do so many things. But I also mean we outsource just the spirit of things in with it. So, we live in a global economy that is based on scarcity in goods and services, and that's how we roll. And I'm not necessarily knocking it, but I am saying that because of it, we have become disconnected to, everything comes from everything. Even the most synthetic seeming thing comes from something that is part of our planet, and it's that connection, the part of it that's like, yeah, if we're not outsourcing everything, if something is more immediate to our senses, then yeah, of course we become more connected. We have a story, and we live off stories. That's what humans do. We're a story-centric species. So the more we can tell that story, the more connected we are. And when we are more connected, we care more. And when we care more, we take care of things better, and we have more attention to it. So to me, I think, we want to do all these things better for the environment or whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. But if we're counting carbon equivalents, that's one thing, but that's all in your head. There's all these things in your head you can do, but it's really the heart is what you got to reach. And it's like the stories is how you reach the heart. And so I think that's why we've adopted that.
Yeah. I was just going to add, that was very well said, Jeff, and like transparency in what we do, I think resonates with people. Bringing them to the mill, like showing them, like that's a huge part of what we do is wanting to have people come to our space, see the logs. We keep it all in one location, see the logs and watch them and walk them through the process of that. And as Jeff said, like in this age of Amazon and things just showing up at your doorstep without any, like understanding of where they came from, it's, I think that's what people are actually after now. And even to the point that we were making earlier about attracting people to Angel City Lumber for people that want to work there, it's the same sentiment. We're putting that out in the world. Whether it's through, just our storytelling or, website, social media. But we've found some amazing people that, this connection that we're in, like within nature, not above. I think that ethos is kind of proven to where it's resonating with the public right now.
Yeah. There's been a movement, for years. Even before Wood-Mizer, there's been a movement for years for people who work with wood or build or whatever to really use those local resources they have, right? Because it's a cool thing to do. It's a fun thing to do. Sort of that opportunity to know where something came from. Understand that something needed to be done, or else that tree was going to go away, or whatever it was, or even that reclaim, like that that barn that's falling down in Indiana from the 1800s. It's like, well, do we really want to push that thing into a hole and burn it and have it go away and be gone forever? And those things can be taken. But I would say what I've seen in the last 10 years is this movement with the communication age coming on big time, and people being able to, not just woodworkers, not just people that want to build their own home, not just people that want to build their own table, but people who are just consuming the products are beginning to understand that there's not a polarization between like, okay, well, don't cut a tree, that's bad, this is a terrible thing, and then they feel like so many people on the other side are like, oh, we're going to clear cut every piece of acreage. It's like, no, there's a movement to really understand how we're going to coexist with this natural resource. And now in the period of time that we're living in, that communication is becoming so broad, and it's an awesome thing to see. I think it's going to change the landscape of the timber industry in the next. I think in 25 years, logging's not going away. Using timber as a resource isn't going away, but I think the way we look at harvesting, I think the way we look at tree farming, I think it's going to look. I think we're going to go further in the next 25 to 30 years than we did in the last 100, in a positive way, for sure.
Yep.
We just have to like zoom back in, right? Like we zoomed out really far to become global, where everything just becomes a product. It's less about the thing where like humans are connected to life and humans are connected to place. It just is true. Your hometown means something to you. Your house, when you get home, feels like something. The things that you live around, you have a relationship. Even if you don't have a relationship with it, you have a relationship to it, right? Like you're referencing those things. It feels like part of your thing. Colin, you're a hunter. I know we've talked about this. Like, I think it's a very similar. Like, I've not met a hunter who's like, oh, I went out and just sprayed bullets and killed as much as I could. Yeah. That's not part of it. The relationship to the life that is given and taken in exchange there is sacred, and it's true of trees. There's a sacred relationship there that we have with trees, that humans have with life, that we just have to retouch that. It's the same as like, a hunter is not excited about factory farming the same, you know what I'm saying? Like the same way as like, we're not excited about clear cutting forests. We want to be reconnected to place and to life. And so we are doing our best to reconnect people to almost that early human thing of like an exchange. Hey, thank you for letting me take this life and use it and help you remain usable in my experience here. But like, it's not just a piece of plastic that gets delivered on your porch from Amazon, right? There's a life given there that needs to be honored and represented, and we need to be aware of it. So we're hoping that like as we're sawing, as we're showing people the log, as we're showing people, hey, this tree didn't come from LA, it came from Los Feliz. This tree didn't come from the forest, it came from that area next to Crystal Lake Cafe, it came from right there. So that people can have a connection to. I had a woman come and buy flooring a few weeks ago. She's like, do you know where in the forest? And I said, I do know where in the forest. And I was telling her about Crystal Lake. She's like, I've never been there, but I want to go there and experience where that tree lived. Because when I walk on the floors, I want to know I want to have that relationship. And that's what we want to provide, is people have the experience. Not everyone's going to take us up on that, and that's okay. But it's why, like, when someone's like, hey, will you ship this across the country? We're going to go, yeah, no. That's just not that's not what this is. You're not participating with these trees. Like, you should go participate with your trees. Regularly, we have people go like, hey, can you make a bench and ship it? And we're like, find a sawyer in your town. There are sawyers all over the country who would be happy to make a bench for you out of a tree from your community. Like, that's the point. So for us, that's the song we're singing. Mm-hmm. It's what we feel connected to and what we feel is true. I think that I hope that I think Colby and Harrison did a really good job of telling that story in the video too. But yeah,
100%.
As sort of what I'm thinking about right now, as it relates to how we sort of interact, or how we interact with our environment and our natural resources, I came out there and visited you guys, as fate would have it, the first week of January. And I showed up and I got into town and we're at the mill and we're going over all this great stuff. And then you guys take me up into the mountains. And as we're driving up there, Jeff, you're like, oh yeah, did you there's a pretty bad fire going on. And it wasn't even specified. And then we get up into the mountains and the winds were just insane. I mean, maybe that's normal for that time of year for you guys, but I got up there and the winds were crazy. So, as I'm driving to the airport, leaving, I'm seeing like this stuff come down, in my headlights, and I'm like, "What the heck is that? Like, it's not snowing out here. This is LA." Well, it was ash from the fire that was in the air. That was, and I could, and it took me. I was back in Indiana before I realized, like, oh, that's what that was. So, that happens immediately after my visit there. Obviously, everybody's life in your area is just rocked by this. So from that point forward, just walk me up to what's been going on since. How has that? It feels like it's changed everything. So take me from that period of time and now, of course, in the last 30, 40 days to where you're at now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think to what we were just talking about local and community, and it's been felt really deeply here. So there's the people who've lost their homes, lost their businesses in Altadena and the Palisades. Number one. So those people, the grief, and lives also, let's not skip over that. So there's those immediate, like I would call that ground zero of like the emotional disruption, and then everything that ripples out after that. So now you've got those immediate communities. There are those who live in those communities that somehow their house did not burn. That adds a whole level of, oh my God, why me? Like I don't even want that. Like, there's like survivor's guilt. And then you've got the communities next to them, et cetera. So it just ripples out where all of Los Angeles County since January 7th has been just wallowing in, oh God, like how do we move forward? How do we help is for most people is how do we help, right? There's a helplessness in not being able to help. So that there's that. And again, this is a metropolis. There's 4 million people here. There's 10 million in LA County. So you take that helplessness and you factor it by, a lot of people, and it's a general vibe here right now. That's there's a suffering that's happening. So to add on to what's happening, out of that desperation to help, there's been all kinds of things happening. So there's activation of community groups, pooling resources together to help people who have lost everything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Food, clothes, things, et cetera, tools. And now that most of those people have found temporary housing and are on their feet, now there's all of this focus on remediation. So now the sites need to be cleaned up. So there's government aid. The Army Corps of Engineers is getting in there, FEMA, EPA, removing debris, removing toxic waste. And there's also another side that I'd love to just speak briefly about that may or may not be the darker side of what's going on. But, I think out of everyone's, again, desperation, everyone hops to their feet, and I don't know how to explain it. There's just a lot of people meeting, and groups are forming, government groups, NGOs, nonprofits, for-profits, trying to figure out how are we going to rebuild Los Angeles from an infrastructure standpoint of things that have been lost. And there's a lot of beauty, and there's a lot of altruism, and there's also a lot of like people just talking, and a lot of wind being thrown around, and a lot of hot air, and I hate to cast judgments. Again, it's just like it's an interesting scene. It's an interesting scene altogether. But you'd like to think everyone's doing their best to actually help the families that are affected most.
Where's the rubber meet the road for Angel City Lumber in this whole thing? Where, I mean, I know it's affected you guys. I feel really strong that you guys have solutions moving forward. I feel like you guys really have something unique to offer in this situation, and I know you can't predict what the future is going to be, but what do you envision the real action from you guys is? Like, what's the best case scenario for you guys, and what's your best idea of how you're going to get there?
At the risk of feeling like I'm talking too much, I'm going to make it as brief, and then maybe these guys can shed some light too. But so there's this really, I'll just call it interesting confluence of events that are happening here in Angel City lumber world. And as far as like where the rubber meets the road in efforts to try and help our community, it's like there are some things that have fallen in our lap over the last 6 months, a year, that are just like, well, my God, I mean, we'd be idiots not to like participate. Like this, we actually feel like this can help. So some of those events are, we've secured our first timber sale with the Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and that basically has given us a lot of lumber, at least comparative to what we're used to. And these are all trees that are fallen either due to beetle kill or windblown or hazard trees, etc. So these are not trees that were planted for timber harvest ever.
And go into that. When you say timber sale, just because I feel like, again, I think this is a place where there's a lot of misconceptions. Some people are going to hear timber sale and their minds are going to go right to a place sort of that's inherently negative. Be long-winded about that. Walk everybody through that. Obviously, I understand it, and Dustin's got a really good idea, and you guys do. But if somebody had just walked into the room and had no idea about it,
that's great. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So let me just preface it by saying this: the people in the Forest Service that we work with, our colleagues in the Forest Service, and our colleagues at CAL FIRE, and our colleagues that understand and have a forest perspective, are like, wow, this is awesome. So I do want to say that. So a timber sale. So a timber sale contract is essentially a contract issued by the Forest Service to have access to U.S. forest land to remove wood. I can't speak to other types of timber sale contracts, but I can certainly speak to ours. So the forest that I'm referring to is the Angeles National Forest. So the Angeles National Forest, the opening to it, closest to Angel City Lumber, is 50 miles from our shop.
I was going to jump in and just say, because if people aren't familiar with Los Angeles, it does bump up to wilderness areas, and one of them being the mountains, and the Angeles National Forest is on top of those mountains. So, which is where the timber is that we're talking about, but also where a lot of those fires come down from.
Yeah. And the issue with currently a lot of wildland urban interface forests domestically is that we haven't managed our forests in a way over the last couple hundred years that that make it free of a lot of wood, dead wood.
Yeah.
And
Fuel.
That's fuel
For fires.
So
That's right.
That's right. So again, to just kind of spell out our timber sale contract, the Angeles National Forest and a contract officer and a sale administrator with the U.S. Forest Service come out to Angeles National Forest, and they do what they call a cruise. So they're essentially going around the forest and they're assessing particular areas for fuel. And they're saying, okay, for instance, at Crystal Lake, like Todd was referring to, up Route 39 in the Angeles National Forest, there was a stand of dead ponderosa. They were standing dead due to beetle kill. And these are old trees. And the entire stand was, over a course of 4 months, went from a healthy stand to infested with bark beetle, and then dead. And obviously, or maybe not as obvious, these beetles can spread. So the idea was, okay, we need to take this stand down and remove these logs in order to keep the beetle kill at bay. So the Forest Service interfaces with us, and they say, look, essentially what happened was we had we were partnered on a grant through a company called Woodworks, which is a nonprofit workforce development company here in Los Angeles that trains people re-entering the workforce to be woodworkers. It's an amazing company. And they got a grant through the Forest Service, federal grant. This is a few years ago. And they said the grant was essentially to make furniture from wood from the Angeles National Forest to get some of this fuel off the floor and make something from it. Stimulate the economy, stimulate sales, etc. So they got this grant, and they said, well, hey, we don't cut lumber. We make furniture, so we're going to partner with Angel City Lumber. They'll mill and dry the lumber. So that's how we met the Forest Service, essentially, through that grant partnership. And when I got to talking to the Forest Service, I learned that it's a huge problem for the Angeles National Forest that is not historically a timber forest, that they have all this fuel on the ground, and it's a real risk. So I started talking to them, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, we can help. But they're like, oh, that's really nice. That's nice. And they were like, well, how much lumber do you produce in a given year? And I said, well, this much. And they were like, oh, okay. We didn't realize that much. So then they went and they said, well, that's actually the lowest possible, but still qualifies as like a commercial mill. And we could interface with you guys for this. I'm like, great. Yeah. So that's how we essentially got on their radar for a timber sale contract. So cut back to the cruise, so to speak. They go and they inventory what wood needs to come out. They aggregate that information. They put it into a contract, a 90-page contract. Page 1 being like, this is the amount of lumber, or this is the amount of timber, of wood, that is part of this contract. You're required to remove it by X date. You're required to remove it in such and such a fashion and to leave the forest in such and such a manner when you're done. And for us, this is an astronomical amount of wood. I think for a large sawmill, this would be the tiniest amount of wood, but for us, it's a massive amount. And it was the first. We're making good on this contract. We're halfway through, and halfway through, we're realizing that, oh my gosh, it is expensive to get this out of the forest, and we have a long way to go, and this is really costly. So we're now figuring out the best ways to be more efficient, to maximize the hauling, etc. But during this conversation, the forest, the Angeles National Forest, as a subsidiary of the Forest Service, has also reached out and said, guys, I don't know how serious you are, because I know this is a lot for you to chew, but like, there's a lot more potentially that we need to get off the floor. Are you guys in or what? Essentially. To, you know, my eternal small business song and dance man, I'm like, yeah, of course. Yes. Yes. You got it. You know? Meanwhile, I come back and we're all like, how do we do this? I don't know.
Everyone's
What do you
punching
think?
Jeff.
Yeah, everyone's like,
what?
thanks. Yeah, totally.
Say no.
Still trying to figure it out. But I think it's more of
is
like,
this all after the fires, or is this?
this is
before
just
the fires?
previous. This is
Just
this
previous,
is
okay.
this is August. We essentially, this past August, we signed the contract, and it served us. The wood from this contract has served us in a lot of projects that we would otherwise be having. However, because of the massive quantity, again for us, we have been scratching our heads going like, okay, but we need to figure out a different type of a contract for the end user here, because our normal projects, like, we're just not going to get through this wood before it deteriorates. So, long story medium, there's a housing crisis in Los Angeles as well, which you may or may not be aware of eternally. So we're like, okay, we got to put our heads together, because we need a different kind of a contract for end user. We're going to have to get in touch with maybe it's government contracts. Maybe it has to do with housing. Maybe it has to do with interim housing. Maybe it has to do with ADUs. We don't know, but we need to make sure this timber is getting utilized within our community, within Los Angeles. And by the way, it also just so happens that Ponderosa is a viable structural product. And by the way, because it's not succession planted and harvested in a certain way, these are old trees. These are slow growth native trees to this area, and they are dense, like as far as like grain goes. I mean, they're a very slow growth timber.
Right.
And even if the jonca hardness of, now sorry to get technical, but even if the jonca hardness of Ponderosa is slightly below that of fir, or like a Douglas fir or a hem fir, or hemlock, straight up hemlock, it's below, but in the ballpark. But you add this layer of this slow growth timber, and you're like, well, this is really good structural timber. So now we're thinking like, okay, we have great structural timber. We've got a lot of it. We've got a community that needs housing. And then, Dustin, to your point, the fires hit in January. And we're like, oh my God. So there's one component where it's like, man, like, what do we got to do to figure this out? Because this could actually help. Then, so come back out from the forest, back in. So if you're at the wildland urban interface, and we were just talking about in the forest. Now, if you come back and you're talking about in the, let's take Altadena, for instance, which is but up against the foothills of that forest. And all of these homes are gone. Now the Army Corps of Engineers is doing their best to get in there and make sense of it and clear it out. And in this emergency, in this haste that things need to get done, the trees that were standing or are standing in Altadena, in the community itself, Altadena is a incredible tree community also. And as, business as usual is happening, the people of the community are like, whoa, hold on a second. Don't be removing trees that are scarred with fire yet. We don't know if they're going to come back or not,
Yeah.
So now there's this whole movement of activists on the ground communicating as best they can with the Army Corps to be like, wait, let's get some arborists that know these species locally. Let's get them to determine whether or not they're going to be able to, save them or not. If they are savable, please leave them standing. If they're not, okay. And if they're not, is where we're hoping to also come in. What we're shooting to do is essentially recover the trees from Altadena and Palisades that have been burned or damaged to the point where they're not recoverable. Recover those logs. And in the case of Altadena, what we're trying to do is have a site, an acreage site, somewhere either in Altadena or around the foothills, where we would take those logs in emergency fashion, as fast as we can get them to this site, this drop site, and store them there. Do our normal thing, which is we tell the story of the tree. We to say where it's from. We say what species. We have that QR code that's going to say, this is the history of this tree, but store them there. And then ideally, start hauling logs from the forest into this same drop site so that we can set up a milling operation to mill up the trees from Altadena for millwork timber, the trees from the forest for structural timber, and then when a community like Altadena rebuilds, it's probably going to be a couple years, I would think, until everything's ready to break ground, that all the many contractors that are going to be rebuilding that area drive down the street, pick up the timber for that project, discounted timber for Altadenans whose trees those were, and rebuild. I mean, that's the dream. That's what we're really going after right now.
Yeah, I think it'd be really awesome to. I think it'd be great to invite the community to see that process too. I think
Yep.
the more people are exposed to it, I think the easier it's going to be to get people to understand, oh, don't cut it, well, no one's really advocating cut everything down, but again, it's bridging that gap and really helping people understand that when a tree needs to come down, or when a tree comes down and is logged, that's not the end of its story.
That's right.
The end of its story isn't always inside of a wall, covered with drywall. That's not the end of it. Sometimes it is. Sometimes that's where it goes. But I guess I'm going to pick on Brady too a little bit. Just what's your grand vision? If you just had all of this as an engineer, if you as soon as ACL figures out with me how they're going to hand you all of this tons of timber, what would you do with it if you had every stick of it laying in front of you tomorrow?
Wow. That's a great question. And I think, as Jeff was saying, there's kind of this new material that we've been getting from the forest, these older growth ponderosa pine, slow growth material. That's that structural component. We've never worked in that space. So, that's kind of unfolding like a new, avenue for us to explore. So currently working in a project in West Hollywood that they're specifying a lot of structural timber for this. This was a job even before, the fires hit, and we kind of had as Jeff was mentioning, been talking about this project to help build back the community there with that ponderosa pine. So, there's that component of if we're having an unlimited supply of structural grade lumber, I mean, that's like the properties of the lumber is very high. Like they're, so I think to answer your question in that way, like having it as a structural outlet for our company is great. And thinking about it just from the number standpoint, we were having to try and figure out, as Jeff was mentioning, it's really expensive to get that out of the forest, and we're a mill that's not a small mill, and we're not a large mill, so we're trying to figure out what can we create at volume that has good margins for us. And so I don't know, the structural lumber I think is actually on a lower margin as a product, generally speaking, because of succession planting and harvesting at a commercial scale. So we would be needing some type of offset from maybe the local government or getting a grant to help produce that to where we could sell it to make money, which is not, like Jeff's, I don't, thinking back, I'm not trying to reduce what we're talking about just to money, but because, Jeff is really, and Todd both have expressed the heart of what we're trying to do. But if we have that, so I guess what you're saying though is like, if we don't worry about the cost, if we just have the milled lumber directly on your, doorstep ready to go, what outlets would we try to focus on? And I think Jeff put it well with millwork lumber versus structural. So we've been focusing almost our entire business on millworks and large scale timbers. That's something that we have. I think that, I would always say there's two kind of people that will come to us, some that are very intentional about where they're wanting to source lumber, and then others from a scale standpoint. And a lot of times, like within the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, bars, they like these showpieces, which oftentimes have an element of scale to it, size. Just when you walk into a space, you're very, taken aback, or have this unique experience with the piece. So that's what we had been working on mostly. So the forest having new logs, old growth, structural application, that's a new area for us to explore, and we're trying to navigate how best to do that. Still while being a relatively small mill, needing recurring revenue. So what Jeff is mentioning, we've identified as a very important part of our business is recurring revenue, like contract sales. If we can supply X amount of material, will there be a buyer for it?
And I think it'd be exciting, and I've been thinking about that as I've been going through this with you guys, and working towards what that looks like. I think, and I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer for sure, so I don't. This is just an idea, but I think for the structural timber, it would be really cool to take a look at thermally modified lumber. That's not a new technology, but it's come a long way in the last decade, and maybe using that in non-traditional construction with other materials, where you still need a lot of it, but maybe you can do something with the lumber to increase its value. But yeah, with that said too, and I'm really I gravitated when I showed up. I gravitated right to Keon, your guys' Sawyer, right? So I'm a technical guy. I'm a customer service guy. That Wood-Mizer thought it would be good to stick me in sales, and so the first thing I do when I get on site is I find the mill, and that's immediately where I go to. Operating a sawmill in downtown LA. I'm not going to give you a lot of intro on that, but talk about how that is, because that as you said, everybody approaches you and you're like, whoa, that's crazy, that's different. How difficult, how easy, how wild? I mean, what all goes with that?
It's the same process as anywhere else, right? Like we have a sawmill, we take logs, we put it through. We have a log yard that's adjacent, so like down the street and around the corner. so there's an element where like we're, for lack of a better term, exposed, right? Like the log leaves one area and comes to another, where we're like just in the city, like driving logs through downtown LA streets, which is bonkers. We're in like a warehouse district, so it's there for manufacturing. So, people definitely stop when we're on the forklift and look at us like, what are these guys doing with a like 32-inch diameter log on a forklift? But we'll like take it down the street and turn in. We're in an area with like, it's very urban. It's just like a warehouse district where there's like a lot of graffiti, and I think people like the look of it. I think people see it and they go like, "Oh, this is urban lumber. It's cool." It's like so city. But for us, it's just like, this is what we know, is what we do. We've got like downtown, and the skyline is literally out our front door. At night, if you're at our space, and when you look out the front door, you see downtown LA. It's so cool to be so close to everything. But I mean, what we have, I'll tell you what changes being in LA is the type of people that we attract in our business. The type of people that we have on our team are so different than I would think maybe in other places. We've got like a lot of, like, almost everyone is a musician or has done like acting or some kind of creative thing, or even people who aren't, like, we have a few people who aren't, that are just like, they're city people, like working in a sawmill. Yeah. So their stories are just super interesting. Like Keon's a reggae musician. Like Keon is like an actively
and a skater too,
and a skateboarder. Like he's just like, this dude is like all vibe. Like when you met him, you're like, oh my God. Like literally you walk into where the sawmill is, and it's just like 90% of the time it's Bob Marley super loud, and Keon like just deep vibes out there.
Yeah. I was immediately drawn,
He's
not
great.
only because of the sawmill, but just everything that Keon was doing out there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. And to give it a visual image, the way that I thought about it was, I came from downtown where I stayed, right? Drove not directly through Skid Row, obviously, but definitely got close enough that the guy from Indiana was like, I got to see this. So come past Skid Row, and I go across the LA River, and in my mind, John Connor's on his dirt bike being chased by the Terminator. And,
shot right there, I think, in the river.
And there's like a drag race for pinks from Greece down there.
Right.
And then boom, there's Angel City Lumber. And so that to me was just such a crazy experience, and a really awesome thing. And I think it's the perfect mix for you guys. It leads me to your guys' life cycle projects. Go into that a little bit. Kind of explain what those are and what that means, life cycle project, and go from there.
Yeah, life cycle projects. I believe the term was coined by Brady. Life cycle. Essentially, what a life cycle project is when a tree is being removed or has fallen in a given site, we come recover the tree, we mill, dry, dress the lumber, etc., and either make something from the lumber or just bring the lumber itself back to the location from whence the tree grew. So it really epitomizes what we're doing, and we love life cycle projects because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the biggest life cycle project that you guys have done to date?
There's a couple of the bigger ones I think are worth mentioning. One is currently happening at Warner Brothers Studios, where there's this really large architecture firm out here called Gensler, and I mean, they're everywhere. They also have an LA office, and they are heading up this massive soundstage project for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is essentially, oh man, Colin, your film references you would have loved this site. So it's Gate 11. It's called The Ranch at Warner Brothers Studios, and there was all of these. Like, you drive down the road of the lot and you're just like, oh my god, that's where that was shot. That's where that was shot. This house was from. Oh my god. And it's just like house after house after house. Well, they're leveling all of it. They've leveled it, and they're making this apparently like the world's most state-of-the-art soundstage, according to them. I'm sure it's true. I don't know anything about that stuff. And essentially, because of that, there was a number of eucalyptus and ash and a couple other species as well that they removed. And the city of Burbank was like, no. They were like, this is not good. Like, we don't want those trees removed. And it was like this whole thing for a lot of years. And anyhow, long story short, all of the trees from that site that were removed are getting utilized back. So I basically said it was ironic. I had a tour with that firm, with Gensler at ACL. We do tours all the time with certain architects and landscape architects and designers, and they come to the mill and we show them around. And just so happened to have a tour with Gensler, and they had mentioned like, oh, hey, we have this Warner Brothers project, and we really want to make sure that these trees find a good home. Would you guys want to recover the trees from the site? And I said, well, yeah, obviously, that's what we do. I was like, but what do you do? You can't use them in the drawings? You can't. What are you designing? Like, can you use them in your design? And they're like, well, actually, yeah, hold on a second. So they went back to the office, and they got in touch with us a few days later, and they're like, there's actually this one element in the cafeteria that's architectural louvers hanging from the ceiling, emerging from the floor. It's this really, and they're all like 3x3 by, whatever lengths. And it creates this really sculptural element in the cafeteria. And we could use all of that from the trees. And we're like, yeah, great idea. So then we started working with the millwork subcontractor, the GC, the millwork subcontractor, and we're producing all of that from these species. So that's an example. There's another one where, for any of you design nerds out there, Charles and Ray Eames, one of America's most storied designer couples of all time, whose designs were manufactured by Herman Miller and Vitra for years. The Eames house, their house that they designed and built in the Pacific Palisades by Santa Monica, is a historical landmark. And it was built on a site that was a eucalyptus grove as part of Abbott Kinney's forestry experiments back in the late 19th century as a way to, forest LA and contribute to a looming timber famine. And all of the eucalypts that were on that site are now, 150, they're declining. And so as they're falling, the eucalyptus, the Eames Foundation, the Eames office were like, well, in true Charles and Ray Eames fashion, they would never let this go to waste. These were their trees. They loved these trees. They loved this grove. They would find a way to utilize this. So we worked with the Eames Foundation and the Eames office to create limited edition designs of Charles and Ray with the eucalyptus from the site, and Herman Miller sold them. It was just like a really pinch me moment. We were like 3 projects in with them. So those are a couple of the bigger ones.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, what a great idea. I mean, really cool usage. How often are you guys having to tell designers and architects, hey, you could use the wood, like you could use the tree, you could do more with this? I mean, how often are you like egging them on, hey, like you could do more?
Yeah, it happens quite a bit, and oftentimes we get there secondarily. Like they might address and reach out and inquire, hey, we have this project. And then the more questions I ask or Jeff asks, we'll understand like, oh, this is a big campus that you guys are looking to put these maybe park benches back into. And then so we'll ask, well, with this massive development plan, are you planning to take any trees down? And then they say, actually, we are. Like, it's going to be in phases, and then we'll kind of get a tree report from the site that will inform us of the quantity, the species, the size, and from there, that's when a project might turn into a life cycle project. They might be reaching out for us just to supply a material that maybe a designer put into their plans, but then, so we do ask those questions to see if there's that opportunity. And oftentimes it's not an easy, like life cycle projects are the hardest projects that we do most of the time, just because, if there's a development like that that's 2.5 years out from finishing their job, and a lot of the materials that we're going to be milling and and turning into will be the last items that go into that project. So there is inherent challenges, just storage, like when those logs come down, and so having those discussions, like what Jeff was saying, with the developer or the general contractor, hey, do you have any room on your site that we can store these? But then also battling when is best to mill them to maintain the quality of the lumber as well. But
the better question is, where are you storing these when they are done?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we had a lot of discussions around real estate for you guys.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
space is a premium, and
Yeah, for sure.
I wasn't accustomed to that, right? Because I walk next door and ask my neighbor, I'm like, hey man, can I throw some stuff over there for a while? And they're like, yeah, sure, just weed eat around it and make sure it looks all right and it's all good. So probably one more question for me. I'll say this about myself. I work with a lot of reclaim and a lot of urban lumber companies in all around the world now at this point, I guess. And I also work with probably more companies that are pushing out 50,000, 80,000 foot a day, a shift of hardwood, and 100,000, 80,000, or sometimes more, dimensional timber. Really, what I define in the Wood-Mizer world, obviously, is really big mills. My final chapter that I'd like to accomplish over my career at Wood-Mizer would be to find a place in the industry for everyone. I think there is a place. I think there's a place for the big producers. And it would be one of my huge goals over time. And obviously I've brought this up before. I think there's a huge misconception around timber. And I think there's a huge misconception around what it looks like to use it in our lives. And obviously, I hope that you guys have gotten through me that it's my firm belief that trees are our greatest renewable resource on the face of this planet. I don't think there's anything that comes close to it. I want to accomplish that over my career with Wood-Mizer. I want to walk away at the end of this thing and really hope that I've made an impact on the industry. Not necessarily in the number of units that I've sold, but bringing the general knowledge to everybody I can about what it really looks like to interface on huge scale timber operations as well as small scale timber operations, and how people continue to use this product. I think that the consumption of this product and how people look at using timber will drive, the success of forests worldwide, going forward. I think that's what it looks like for me. Sharing with you guys, you didn't ask for it, but I gave it to you anyways. What's the hope? I guess I shouldn't say the final chapter. What's the end goal for you guys? Where do you see it 10, 20, 30 years from now?
Can I you should talk about this. I'm not the guy you are, but I just want to say, Colin, that it's really cool to hear your point of view on that, because we feel like Wood-Mizer has been such a like when we started, there were tools that just didn't exist that you guys have created for businesses our size. Essentially, like as you guys are building your business, we're building our business. And it's providing a path forward for all of us to grow, to get to those super big sizes. But you can't start that sawmill like without millions of dollars and some lumber tycoon. You have to start somewhere. And that's what you guys are creating, an entrance into this industry with tools that people can afford to get into and start. And, I would say like for us, like, and kudos to Jeff on this. Well, I guess it's not, it just came to you. It's not your thing. So no kudos. I'll take it back. We feel like very much like Jeff has seen this vision of like LA County's trees. That's what our mission is, period. Like we're not interested in Orange County's trees. We're not like we are, but like that's not our area to deal with. We feel like LA County's trees are what we're responsible for. Doesn't mean that we have to touch every one. If other sawmills pop up, great. Like there are plenty of trees. It's not about us controlling it. It's just that like we feel like we're responsible for the trees that are getting cut and dying and not being honored in a certain way. So like if they're getting honored by somebody else, fine. But that said, like from go, that's always been our mission. So like when we first met the Forest Service and we're like, oh wow, we're getting into the LA like to the forest. Now we're in like this is crazy. Like we finally are. We knew we would be a part of that at some point. Like we have like I have a map in my head and I've got pinpoints of like where are we getting trees so far, right? And it's at some point we will be getting all the trees. We are a city tucked against a national forest and filled with an urban forest for hardwoods that should sustain the people of Los Angeles. There's no need to import or ship out anything. We live in a resource rich environment. I don't even like to use the word resource. We live in an environment, we're participating with the nature around us that is robust and capable of, even in a city that's so dense with people, it provides plenty of what we need. I would say like if for people who are starting a sawmill, people who are larger than we are, like always have like if you can, I got to give advice, but always have that your vision, Colin, always have it in your head that like you can expand. Like your city is big and has probably a lot of trees. You can expand your business and provide those resources to your community. There's no reason not to. But it's just like it's literally a matter of like where are you headed and what's your vision to get like you can get there, but you got to know the end goal is bigger than like taking a few trees. There's like we're capable. Like the tools are there and the business is there to do this.
Yeah,
Brady.
Sorry,
Brady. You were. I think your story, as I sort of took it in, you were really. It seemed as though you were really intentional about coming to Angel City Lumber. What's that end story look like for you?
Yes, I've early on I understood like growing up with animals, like this kind of interconnection that everything is connected, from the grass to the rain to the cosmos. I mean, there's so much. The llama, the wool. I mean, everything. And so, whenever, I was going to share this because I think it's kind of interesting. Like during the pandemic, I'm talking about more of like a resiliency here. When lumber prices were spiking, and just no one could unload lumber from the ports, Angel City Lumber had complete control of its own supply chain, and we didn't raise prices. I mean, because we felt like, why would we? But it is, an interesting idea of creating. You would go to there was a flour shortage, right? Like everything there, we couldn't, when you go to the store, you were fighting over just the basic supplies. And then at that moment, I kind of realized, wow, what we're doing, having your local sawmill in your community, an element of resiliency, like security. Like I even started like looking into like the manufacturing history of LA, which is prolific, and how many things were made here. And we'd got away from that. We've gotten away from that. Like we've been outsourcing everything. I think even our PPE, we couldn't even get N95 masks because it was, being manufactured overseas. So I mean, there's that one element of just kind of understanding the importance of your place and having a community, having a service that you can provide for your community. And, we're doing that in one way, and we're also doing it with intention and heart, and honoring, which there's a lot to honor, like of the trees of LA. And then, also engaging conscious consumerism too, giving people choices. I think, having, again, a view into a window of how something is made kind of satisfies a certain curiosity that people have, and getting that connection. And for me, like putting that out in the world where people can, which is part of one of, I talked to a lot of designers about this because, the project owner, they can spend a lot of money on what, or there's a lot that goes into getting local lumber into those spaces. But if you don't tell that story, and all of your constituents are the people that go to those restaurants or those those parks might not know that it was these trees are from this location. So educating the folks, which I know in a lot of the green building programs, that's part of one of the items that you get credit for, is telling that story on site. Having people come into that space, they subconsciously just might know that there's something important happening here, but actually telling them too is, I think, a key component of bringing people together there, like, and communing around our trees with each other. So,
yeah, it's fantastic. Kind of, Jeff, maybe give us your 20 to 30 year vision as we, kind of wrap up here. I mean, I guess really what we're asking is, what's the legacy of ACL? What do you want it to be? What do you see it being?
I see your 20. I might give you 100 if you're up for it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, as my best stab at what I hope for a legacy. Who knows? Obviously, yeah. So, just to touch upon, Colin, what you were talking about regarding renewable resource. I think certainly that is a buzzword or buzz phrase, and I'm going to use another one, which is regenerative, which is another buzzword. But the way I see lumber and sawmilling in the future is tied in more holistically with tree planting. I mean, one could argue that it is currently at the industrial scale still tied in with forestry and sawmilling. So I would just say on a local level to do the same. And what I mean by that is, to Todd's point earlier, in Los Angeles County, if we just take Los Angeles City actually for a moment, there's 13 million trees in Los Angeles City, let alone the county. Then in the Angeles National Forest, you've got 650,000 acres, and they say roughly there's between 75 and 100 trees per acre. Okay. So if you take just a normal straight up 10% dieback of all of those trees, there's a lot of wood that's just from fallen trees. No one's ever planting a tree to harvest it ever. Okay. So if you just take that model for a second and you say, okay, well, currently the model is we're succession planting certain forests to harvest to distribute globally. So like if I live in Los Angeles as of right now, I'm never, hopefully until us, but I'm never ever using timber from Los Angeles to build in Los Angeles. I'm getting it from the major mills, right? So those forests need to be producing a lot. It's a lot of stress on those forests just from a pragmatic standpoint. I'm not even talking about a environmental, spiritual. I'm just talking about nuts and bolts. Like it's just a lot of stress on those forests to be able to produce that kind of lumber for that kind of market. So I guess what I'm saying is if you, over time, utilize a more connected model, a less industrial. I mean, we're still using the industrial technology we've developed now, but we're doing it in a way that's making more efficient a more local model. Then there's no reason why, to Todd's point, we can't be producing, like every local area could be producing at scale for its local area, period. And by the way, all of the forests would be better for it,
Yeah, that's right.
So, and that really dovetails in with Wood-Mizer. Here, plug in with Wood-Mizer. That obviously dovetails very much into your, where you guys come in also. So there's that. And the other thing I would say is, I'm going to get back to the regenerative buzzword. I'm just talking about dieback right now. Like I said, I'm not ever talking about succession planting and free to grow harvest. But also, pre-industrial revolution, all timber harvest, all lumber harvest was done in a woodlot, a woodland. And these trees were coppiced, typically, which means they were cut at the base at a certain year. A certain amount of acres would be cut at the base, and then that's for that year's harvest. And then for the next year, you would go to the abutting acreage harvest. But the last year's harvest that you already took, those stumps you let grow, reshoot, right? And this is typically, I know I'm talking about a very specific, like a hardwood forest typically, but you would let that, and then that stool, that coppice stool, so to speak, the root system would grow and shoot more number of shoots, straighter, bigger diameter every year. And for millennia, this is how we harvested lumber. The same organism would be producing and producing and producing for sometimes up to thousands of years. So it's just interesting to me that we got away from that model in order to create an industrial distribution when we could still be doing that, and we could be using the land that we currently live on in a way that it should be utilized with the right flora, the right fauna. And we could very easily have a reciprocal participatory model where our forestry dovetails so nicely with our sawmilling and our providing lumber for our community, again, from trees that we can say, this is from this community. Oh my God, amazing, and it inherently has gratitude because you know where it came from. So in 100 years or so, hopefully sooner, I think that we should just be slowly and very assuredly dialing back and making this more local and more local and more local and more local, more local management of our plants.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So just to make sure that everybody knows how to do this, how can people follow you, follow your story, and if they do want to contact you to engage in a project, how can they find you?
Yeah, they could reach out. We have a new website launching probably in about a month's time, but regardless, you can always reach out at info@angelcitylumber.com. You can follow us on Instagram at angelcitylumber. Those are probably the two best ways.
And they can actually see slabs and lumber that you guys are producing on your website currently, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, our slabs are up there. And you can kind of get a sense of all the different kind of products we're making. We do a lot of timber products as well as those slabs. I'd also say, like, if we have any listeners that are to the podcast who are in forestry or in this industry working at a large sawmill, and you have any insight, hoping to notes from somebody who's, especially if someone is working with ponderosa pine in a forested environment, love to hear.
Teach us.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what your path was. If you're working at a giant sawmill, what you're doing, how that went. As we're looking to like scale our business, we'd love to get. I found that the wood community, and as you guys are talking about offline, the Wood-Mizer community in particular has been so tight and supportive. So we'd also be, if anyone's getting started and has questions, we're no experts by any means, but we'd love to support anyone else too. But yeah, if anything we can add, or we definitely could use some help too with anyone who has experience.
Yeah, so sawyers in general across the industry very much are willing to support one another, and there's really not many secrets in the industry, right? Everybody likes sharing information and helping each other out. So absolutely, that's a great point. I will put out there, if you haven't seen it, you need to go watch the Wood-Mizer film that we put together for and with Angel City Lumber. And it's such a fantastic film, fantastic story. You can see that on Wood-Mizer's YouTube channel. It's posted up there right now, and we'd love to hear feedback from it. Feel free to reach out to us as well regarding that. And of course, you can find us on all the social channels, and we've probably posted that film on every social channel we have, from LinkedIn to Instagram, et cetera. So please go out and watch that. Guys, we really appreciate you guys being on this. We know it takes a bit of time to put these things together, and you're giving time out of your day. So thank you so much for sharing your story in the film, giving us some backstory here, keeping us updated on what's going on in Los Angeles in general after the fires. We greatly appreciate all you're doing to help out with that and to kind of get in front of the timber destruction that could very easily happen after this. So really appreciate the time. Like I said, it's a privilege getting to meet you guys and hear all of this. So
yeah. And even though our podcast time is over, you guys are stuck with me now, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Our story goes on.
that's right.
Nice. Excellent.
And yeah, so we'll get you there. I think defining giant sawmill. But we're going to get there, and I'm so excited about your guys' future and you guys letting us be a part of that. I couldn't be more appreciative. So absolutely. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you all, and thank you so much for the opportunity to tell our story and to help us on our own journey.
And on an individual level, thank you guys so much for like your time, Colin, with guiding us, and Colby and Harrison, like with their storytelling, and Dustin for being on the podcast, but also to Wood-Mizer for creating the tools that help people like us get started in this world and be able to do the thing that we're passionate about. It's an awesome business that you guys have found this group of people who want to get involved that don't have a giant sawmill yet. So thank you guys for being thoughtful about what we need and providing those tools to help us be successful in this way of doing our mission.
Hear, hear.